Welcome today, everybody. My name is Alan Lebo. I'm the Church Health Workforce Development Coordinator. And today we're here with the Scholars Program, specifically our Referral Scholars. Before we introduce ourselves to them, the Church Health Scholars is a gap year program where we focus on helping recent college graduates continue exploring their healthcare careers and different options. And so they get a chance to spend a year here working with our staff and our clinics and our administrative areas, helping to with our services and our programs, and really do provide a level of support and care and just learning for our staff that is just kind of out of this world and something that they just bring in terms of value. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and have ask our scholars to introduce themselves. So Anusha, if you'll go ahead and kick us off.
Sure. So my name is Anusha, like Alan said. I'm a referral scholar and I am a recent college graduate. I graduated in May 2020 and I'm a referral scholar with Jack and I'm loving it so far.
All right, thanks Anusha. Go ahead, Jack.
All righty, yes. My name is Jack Visca. I'm from Memphis. I'm a referral scholar as well. I came to Church Health about a little bit over 2.5 years ago, and yeah, working in the referral scholar position right now and enjoying it.
All right, and I believe we have your supervisor or one of your supervisors on here with us.
Yeah, so my name is Jeneba Winfrey-Porter. I'm the Director of Medical Operations here at Church Health, and the referrals group is one of the scholar groups I work with. I have the opportunity to work with PT, optometry, healthcare administration, medical, and the referrals scholars groups. So it's a lot of fun to work with you all.
Yeah, so Jeneba gets to work with a lot of different of our scholar groups, especially a lot of those that have a clinic-facing role. So yeah, can you guys tell us a little bit more about yourselves, maybe a little bit about where you're from, scholars, a little bit about where you plan to go next, what are you looking forward to after the end of your scholar year, and then, you know, especially for supervisors, what brought you to Church Health? So either of the scholars feel free and jump in and head first with that one.
Absolutely. I'll start us off. Can you guys hear me just fine? Perfect. Alrighty. So yes, I'm from Memphis, born and raised here, went to middle school, high school, and high school here. Ended up going away to UT Knoxville for college and then back to University of Memphis to finish it off. But I actually got involved with Church Health, not starting out with the Scholars Program first, but actually through an internship that I started when I was a junior in college. At the time, I knew that I wanted to go into the medical field. I didn't have any idea of what specifically I wanted to do. Or really what I, wanted my career to look like. I didn't have a ton of details of what I wanted my day-to-day to look like, but I really wanted to, dive into that and start, getting some experience so I can make an educated decision about what I want to do later on down the line. And so I had one of my wonderful cousins inform me about the Church Health Center. It's actually a good friend of Jeneba's. And at the time, I didn't know about the Church Health Center. I didn't know about the Crosstown Concourse, the building that we're in. I didn't know what they did. Information at all. Tell me about how absolutely wonderful of a program and a place it is, and that I should definitely look into it. I started off coming to Church Health through an internship, actually with Jeneba as my first boss, and from the first couple of weeks, I could tell that this was going to be an amazing place, and that I had definitely started off my journey in one of the best possible places in Memphis to start out my journey. I slowly started gaining more and more information about what a career in the medical field would look like. And though I was, only an intern at the time and wasn't directly, thrown into the fire of things, I really got to see just what it would be like working in a facility that is a healthcare facility. And so through there, I moved on to actually work a patient service assistant or a front desk position, which I also loved until eventually one day, my boss at the time, she informed me, asked me if I was interested in the scholars position, and, from that on, I started doing my own research, seeing what the scholars position was about. Eventually, I got a couple of different positions that I was interested in. I applied for it, and I was luckily able to be accepted into the referral scholar position, which I've absolutely been loving so far and have a ton of experience and stories to tell, but I guess that'll be for later. So I guess I'll pass it on over to Anusha.
So I'm also raised in Memphis. I'm from Memphis. I was born in Atlanta, so I've been going kind of back and forth because I just graduated from Emory recently, so coming back from Atlanta. But this also is not my first experience at Church Health. I was also an intern a couple of years ago, also in the referrals department, and that's what kind of introduced me to the unique aspects of Church Health. It's a really unique place. It's a really awesome place to be. I learned a lot about the Memphis community during my time here, and I knew I wanted to come back. And so I think coming back to referrals specifically has been really meaningful for me. And like Jack said, we've been learning a lot. We've been learning a lot about not just healthcare and like the medical profession, but we've been really getting a holistic approach and holistic view to what goes on behind the scenes in healthcare. And I think that's been really important for me moving forward. I'm on the pre-medical track, and I've pretty much been interested in medicine for a long time now, but I've learned so much that I didn't know beforehand. And I think everything that I'm learning every day as a referral scholar is going to help me moving forward along my journey to medicine.
You're muted right now, Alan.
Of course, I'm muted. I was saying thank you to you two, and inviting Jeneba to say, of course, if you'd like to say a little bit more about yourself, what brought you to Church Health, and kind of where you're from, a little bit more about your background, Jeneba.
Yeah, I'm originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I moved to Memphis after undergrad. I went to undergrad at UT Chat, and actually started my first career in student affairs. So I have a long history of working with learners. It's probably one of my favorite things to do is to mentor young people who are interested in the healthcare profession. So I've been at Church Health for about 6 years, almost 7. It'll be 7 actually in about 3 weeks or so. So I guess I could claim 7 at this point. But so I've done a lot of different roles here at Church Health, but now my role currently is to work with really a lot of the clinics, our medical clinic, our referrals team, the quality team, our optometry clinic, and our physical rehab clinic. What brought me to Church Health was really the wanting to work with primary care and not tertiary care. A lot of people who do healthcare administrative work in the hospital. And I really was interested in seeing what it was like to help prevent people from getting to the hospital. And so I was really interested in that, as well as the faith-based components and the way of looking at the whole person. I was lucky enough to have a supervisor when I was working at a hospital here in the city who had ties to Church Health, who connected me to some of the leadership that got me really introduced to what Church Health was about. And then I was really, really excited to work with the Scholars Program, because I was coming from a student affairs background and missed working with students, and now getting the opportunity to work with people post-undergrad has been really, really awesome to see those grow. And, you know, my first scholar actually will be finishing medical school this year. So it's pretty exciting to kind of see that trajectory.
Yeah, that really is a cool experience. I can, as of this year, can kind of speak from experience, like seeing the first scholars that you kind of worked with kind of coming in and getting out of school and moving on. We've had a couple of experiences with that this year where they're kind of reaching their next steps and going on. So that's been really cool to kind of echo what you're talking about, Jeneba. And so, Jeneba, I like how you started talking about your role as the clinical director. And so if you could speak a little bit more about that on what it means, because it's not often that we'll have such a variety of scope in terms of scholars with supervisors. And so if you could kind of share a little bit about what that role means.
Yeah. So my role as director of medical operations, look, can't even say my role. It is.
We were joking with Andriana a couple of weeks ago about just the difficulty at this point of trying to remember everybody's title. It's like, I remember you're a director and I know what you do.
It's hard for me to know what I do and know what I direct sometimes. But it's a very nuanced role. It's a lot of wearing a lot of different hats and a lot of shifting priorities at any given time. I supervise some medical professionals. I supervise optometrists and physical therapists. And then I work alongside our physician leads and our provider leads in the medical clinic. I serve as leadership for our residency program and our Church Health Baptist residency work that we do. And so it's just wearing a lot of different hats essentially. But my overall goal is just to make sure that when patients are coming into Church Health, that they receive the best possible care. And most of my work resides in the background. And most of my team, however, are the team members that patients will see when they come into the clinic and that they interact with. And so a lot of it is making sure that things are operational, making sure that the day-to-day things are taken care of in a way that a patient never sees anything, that they have a great experience and they feel like they've been cared for appropriately. So giving the team tools to be successful in trying to remove barriers, if there are any, would be probably the easiest way to summarize what I do day to day.
All right, so yeah, so thank you for sharing that. So Jeneba has a very wide scope of what she focuses on. And so she was saying everything from working with optometry to primary care to family medicine, just really wearing a lot of different hats, juggling a lot of different things. And so I'd like to invite the scholars to kind of share their own experiences about their roles and describe to us what is your role as you see it within Church Health, within your department. And how does that help support Church Health as a whole? So Jack, Anusha, whichever one of you guys wants to jump in on that, but go ahead.
Sure, so I can start us off and then Jack, just feel free to jump in. So Jack and I have similar roles, but I think, so there are 4 referral scholars specifically, and each of our roles kind of differ. So that's the kind of interesting part, but generally the referral scholars are responsible for scheduling diagnostic tests for the entire clinic. So that's family medicine, primary care, urgent care, subspecialty clinics. We take care of the diagnostic testing for all of Church Health patients in the clinic. And then we also have the referral side, where we're each kind of given different subspecialties and we're responsible for managing those subspecialties. So, we manage the referrals, we schedule patients for their appointments, and then of course it comes back to the holistic approach where we'll schedule some diagnostic testing for those patients as well. So we kind of get to see the whole picture and the whole kind of follow through of patients' experiences. Because we also at the same time get to be with the physician in the clinic at their appointment, and we'll be doing scribing for them. Sometimes we get to shadow, sometimes a doctor will kind of, let us sit in on different patient appointments and see what their history is like and kind of talk us through and have a really full-on teaching experience with us. So I think being a referral scholar, it's this kind of the same with Jeneba. You wear a lot of different hats and you kind of help where help is needed. And so I think with that, I've learned a lot, and kind of having to be in that kind of fast-paced, learning on your feet, that's been really helpful for me. And I think I've been gaining a lot of different valuable skills just being in this role.
Oh, absolutely. And I definitely agree with that. I will say trying to describe, everything that we do in just a couple of brief sentences is extremely difficult, but I think Anusha did a wonderful job of it there. I think similar to Jeneba's role, how we do get to, wear a couple of different hats. I think one of the most interesting things about our position is that we really do get to be in the central of everything. We get to kind of be the in-between for all of the specialty providers that we work with between, we're in between them and the patients that they see. We're in between them and the other volunteer providers that work at Church Health and the other primary care and family medicine doctors who work here every single day. We get to, kind of be a relay station, almost their go-to person for, facilitation of patient care or facilitation of messages from, specialty notes back to the primary care provider, whatever it may be. But I think that's one thing to really harp on is what makes this position so amazing and also difficult at the same time is we really get to, we have a huge responsibility of working with those specialty providers, but being their right-hand man and facilitating, anything that they can't do, kind of like the back end of things, making sure, like you said, a diagnostic test gets scheduled, information gets passed on to providers that it needs to be passed on to. And so I will say in the beginning, it definitely was a daunting task, being kind of, thrown into the mix of things and having to, catch your ground, hit the ground your feet running and just, really learn as you're going along. And though it was difficult, I think it's been an unbelievable learning experience and just overall experience in general, because, you know, I think a lot of people like Anusha and myself who are coming directly out of undergrad to start a position like this haven't had, you know, a real full-time 40-hour, 45-hour week, you know, job in the past. And so to come into a position where you are starting one of, you know, if not your first or second 40-hour a week real-time full position, you're also directly in the, you know, field or career that you see yourself going into. And so I know me and Anusha differs, and she would like to go to med school and I would like to go to a physician's assistant school, but just, you know, wanting to stay within that realm of the medical field and being able to come into a position like this that's so intricate in the medical field, in patient care, in, you know, different specialties and whatnot, to be able to have that experience of, one, what it's like in real time working with these physicians, what it'll be like in the future for us to work with these physicians and to be, you know, physicians in the future. I just think it's an unbelievable experience that not many people at this age get to take advantage of, being able to, you know, work with patients directly, work with providers directly, and to have such an intricate role into the church health system and how we care for our patients. It makes you, one, gain a lot of experience, gain a lot of knowledge, and just, you know, feel really good about yourself that you're actually in the mix helping people as, you know, as much as we do.
Cool. I really liked what you said with that, with kind of being in the in-between, Jack. And I think that really highlights really well, Anusha, your point of kind of working with the different groups and connecting pieces. And so I thought it was really neat because Jack, what I kind of pictured was Jeneba really described this healthcare, holistic healthcare system that is church health, right? But what you describe, you two, from your experiences, are you really are understanding and are the gears that make the magic happen. Like there's this idea of like, oh, church health works with volunteer providers, and then those providers then see our patients at low or no cost, which is, you know, great for equitable health care, and that's what we're all about. But and then they move, you know, through that process, and somehow magically, you know, the notes get written up, somehow the diagnostic tests happen, somehow the orders get sent to where they need to go. And at the end of the day, that's not magic. That is, you know, that is a scholar. And that is something that we hear a lot of, is that scholars are behind the scenes making these connections. And so I think it's really cool that you guys are literally seeing the gears and are the gears and understanding how this big machine works. And then here you have Jeneba, who is over here, and she's been here, she's been in your position, and she is sitting here masterminding, you know, the machine and making sure that it works, and kind of, you know, helping out where she is needed in terms of services and support, right? So I think that's kind of a cool picture that you guys have started to paint. So with that, it sounds like you guys have learned a lot. And so I'm wondering, what have been some of the more challenging moments for you guys in your experiences so far?
I can definitely speak on that. That's one thing, like with as much experience as you're getting in this role, you're going to be presented with as many challenges as, you know, there are opportunities for learning experiences. But I think that's one reason why this position prepares you so much for what comes after. But instead of jumping to that, some things that I have felt have been a real difficult struggle in this position. Time management is probably one of the biggest overarching factors because it really deals with everything that you do. One, like I said, being in that full-time 40-hour-a-week position for the first time, you have to learn how to balance, you know, a very intense workload. And so, though coming out of undergrad, we've had to, you know, do things in the past, like with the same time management skills for preparing for classes and preparing for tests in the future. I think this job really, you know, takes everything that you learn, but then, you know, steps it up a notch, because not only are, you know, the tasks that you're doing affects yourself, they also affect patients, they affect providers, they affect, you know, the entire church health system. And so keeping up with things on your own and being able to balance your own schedule has been a huge struggle, but also a huge learning experience, because I felt that I have grown in the position much more than I have in any past position or any past, you know, schooling I've ever done. I'd say along those lines of being in the professional environment, it's a lot different, you know, immediately coming out of undergrad, constantly being surrounded by, you know, groups of your peers and really only interacting with, you know, teachers, professors, you know, not too many people that are outside your own peer or age range, you're thrown into this entire new role of, you know, working with tons and tons of people who are of different ages, different diversity groups, you know, different levels, different expertises. And it's a learning curve to learning how to, you know, one, conduct yourself, but learning the best way to work with such a wide variety of people to get everything done as, you know, as best as possible. And I think one thing that makes that learning process a little bit easier at Church Health is one thing that I've noticed, and, you know, though I haven't had too many full-time positions, Church Health, the community here amongst just the employees it's unbelievable. I know this is one of my first full-time positions, but I really can't imagine working for another company where you have so many different people who are just such wonderful people to work with, and people who, you know, everything regarding specific teams of the whole Church Health system, everything's built on a team basis. It's not you doing all the work yourself. Like everybody's working with everyone else. Everybody's on a team. Everybody's making sure that their teammates are doing what they do, making sure if they need help that they're offering it. It's a team basis. And so I think that's one thing that has made, you know, that learning curve a lot easier and a lot more adjustable, and been able to learn from my mistakes faster. And then other than that, I would just say learning to balance that work-life stress, or just work-life balance. I think this job can definitely be stressful at times, especially when, you know, might have some weeks that are a little bit easier than others, but you have some weeks that are, you know, overloaded with stuff, and you have to, you know, do your best to get as much done in a small time frame or whatever it may be. I think learning that work-life balance and being able to do things outside of work to put you in a mood and to, you know, to work on yourself, to add those self-care things in throughout your day that allow you to be yourself during work hours. So you're not coming in, you know, tired from the next day or stressed about something outside of work, so you can really focus and devote your full self to the work that you're doing. I think that's one balance that I'm still working on a lot to this day. And so I think as time has gone on, I've definitely grown month after month, but I think that's something that I'm going to have to continue working on. And I hope, you know, by the end of this next 6 months of this year-long program that I'll have grown a lot.
Right. And Jack, I think that that realization that being a challenge is something that everybody faces at some point. And so it's one of, it doesn't necessarily go away, but realization of being aware of that and working with that and what that means. So that's good.
Oh, big time.
Anusha, did you want to speak to any challenges that you faced or any specific moments?
So I think just similar to Jack, I think he really, you know, hit it on the head. And I think there are challenges and, you know, like time management, the transition coming into a full-time job from being a full-time student. I think those are all things that the referral scholars, and I guess a lot of the scholars all had in common. So having that team, kind of having that backbone to kind of work off of and ask for advice, like, oh, how are you handling this? How did you handle this? How do you think I should handle this? It really helps you adjust to the new kind of lifestyle, I guess, from school to work. And I don't think there's anything like a glaring problem or a glaring like challenge. I think there's a lot of different problem solving that comes with this job. And so that's a lot of just learning with the experiences, learning as time goes on, learning from your past experiences and growing from that. I think that's kind of like the main thing. There's like little mini challenges always going on, but I think that's kind of the fun part about this job is that you're always having to think. There's not really a time where you can just kind of like be off. Like you're always kind of thinking and challenging yourself to learn and grow and be better. And that can be a challenge, but it is also really rewarding in the end. And so I think those two together and having like a team to back you up is really important. So, and I feel like I've had that here.
Well, good. I think that can be a good challenge to have, but I see what you mean. It can be rewarding, and those learning pieces can definitely pay off. Jeneba, I'm interested to hear from your perspective. What, having worked with a variety of scholars over the years, what have been some of the biggest challenges that you see them face? So maybe not just this cohort or this group, but just what are some things that you observe?
Well, I'll speak towards this cohort and then I'll give like a kind of more global thing. And so the cool thing, and the referral scholars don't always mention this, referrals is the only department where 45% of the work is done by the scholars, right? Every other department, the scholar is like there on top of our staff, but the scholars are the core staff in the referrals department, right? Which gives them, that's why they wear so many hats. That's why they're involved in so many different things, is because they really have the responsibility of like seasoned staff. They just jump in every year and do an amazing job. So I will start with that. That in itself is a challenge that every year I've been amazed at how well the scholar class has been able to pick up. And this year in particular, in the midst of a pandemic, in the midst of just providers canceling or patients canceling and having to be extraordinarily flexible, the scholar group has just been able to jump in and do a great job. So I would say the global challenge is honestly what they spoke towards. It is a different cadence. Working 40 hours a week. I remember when I was in college and thought that I was so busy, and then I started working and I was like, oh, okay. So I miss a midday nap. Like I miss these things. And then just getting used to working with people, I think of, different skill sets, different backgrounds, different levels of education, not only with our patients, but with the staff members, can also be, and not really a bad challenge, but it's something new. It's an opportunity to improve. It's something to learn about. I've seen, just different scholars try and do that. But I think also the challenge of really seeing if this career field that they're interested in is really what they want to do, right? And that's a really cool thing about the scholars program, that they get to work alongside someone who's doing the work that they hope to do in their future. But, it's a challenge to say, okay, is this really for me, right? Is this what I want to do? And, using this opportunity to either reverse course or stay the course is something that I've seen a lot of scholars do over time. And, trying to navigate working 40 hours a week and navigate the next step, right? By it being a gap year program, you're kind of still always thinking about what's next, but also still trying to do the best job you can in what you're doing now. So being present while also future focused can be a balancing act. But most of our scholars do really, really well with that. And as a supervisor, I think the biggest challenge for me is to help make sure that the plate feels balanced and help guide the work appropriately, and not give an overwhelming amount of responsibility, but also give the scholar team the opportunity to grow and improve through challenges and new opportunities and new experiences.
All right, I think that was well said. I like what you said about the opportunity for scholars to come in and really explore if what they're doing is what they're really interested in doing. And I hear a lot of that from scholars as well. We've heard that from some of the past webinars, that it really is a chance to explore, your chosen career, your chosen field in a real world environment. And so I think Jack and Anusha, with what y'all are saying with those real life skills, so I think time management has been a big one, not just for the referral scholars, but again, for all scholars, there's this kind of awakening of like, oh, I'm kind of responsible for myself. Somebody's only may come in and check up on me once, but at that point, I'm on my own. And so understanding that kind of level of personal accountability and what that means in kind of a work and real life environment. So I think that's kind of neat that you guys have all kind of referenced that. I think with that, and I want to talk a little bit more about what you guys have learned over the past year, or I guess at this point, past 6 months. But before that, really wondering, based on your school experiences and your past experiences, whether with extracurriculars, volunteer work, or et cetera, how have you been prepared for this role? So I know that you both said that you were interns here at Church Health. And you may speak a little bit to that, but really, how has your school experience or other experiences helped prepare you for something like Church Health?
So yeah, I'll definitely say starting out, well, one being, in the medical field, working with providers on a daily basis, seeing their process of, meeting the patient, diagnosing them, or prognosing them, diagnosing them, whatever it may be, deciding on what diagnostic test they want done, just kind of seeing how they go step at a time to, help these patients out. I think the past, basics or brief medical knowledge that I've obtained from specific classes that I've taken in the past, whether it be, as simple as biology or basic chemistry, as far as to the more advanced classes that I took as a senior, an undergrad or a junior, such as my neuroscience courses or general endocrinology, ones that are a little bit more specialized. I think it's been an amazing experience to be able to, in shadowing these doctors, not only just observe them, to also be able to interact with them, ask them questions, or ask them like, why did you ask this question to this patient? Why are you ordering this test? What's the difference between this and this? The entire time that we are in clinic working with these volunteer providers, it's educational. It's a training session. We get to learn on the job every single day. And I think that's one thing that my past knowledge that I've obtained from undergrad and just, general interest in medicine throughout my life, I think that's allowed me to take so much more advantage of this position and the, opportunity of being able to interact with specialists, regular providers, family medicine providers on a daily basis, because rather than feeling, very out of the loop when they're going through and just kind of observing from a distance, I get to be an intricate part, as in I get to ask them questions. I get to, offer up some advice to see if this is something that they would recommend themselves, whatever it may be. But you get to, build off everything that you've learned. And though you're mostly working with different specialties, you're getting, diagnoses from all around the board, where you get to, one, have the experience of seeing what it's like to diagnose and treat a patient with this diagnosis in person, and then also what small differences change over time with, what comorbidity adds to this diagnosis or whatever it may be. Being able to be in that situation, observe it firsthand, and then communicate with the providers. I think my past medical knowledge that I've obtained has made that all the more of an experience and all the more of a learning experience, because I'm able to, bounce back and forth with them and build on the knowledge that I already have obtained to hopefully better prepare me for any, graduate school or career I may have in the future.
Right. So Jack, what I'm hearing you talk about, and so one of the things that other scholars or we've heard about in the past is this relationship or this kind of role of a scholar as a learner. Mm-hmm. And so I think you're really maybe the first time I've heard it go in discussed in such depth in terms of being a benefit for the scholar. I guess we kind of know that, and we usually talk about the scholar and how you benefit with our learning. Mm-hmm. And then of course you're here to learn. That's the whole purpose of the program. But I really think that it's neat that you're hitting on this. Coming from a learning environment already enables you to better learn. And so puts you in that situation where people are trying to help you and support you and because they're understanding you're coming from that learning environment. And so I think that does, kind of connect and correlate mm-hmm. with this idea that we have with scholars. And I think Jeneba would agree with me that, not only are you here to learn, we're here to learn from you at the same time. And so I think that what you're saying kind of does add into that relationship. So that's kind of neat. Does anybody else want to comment on that question?
I'm sorry, I'm experience. It's cutting in and out for me. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing everything that you're saying.
Oh, I was asking if anybody else.
Sorry, the past I apologize. The last 10 seconds or so, my internet connection went crazy. So I apologize. I did not hear what you said, Alan.
You're good. I was inviting anybody else to comment on the question.
Okay, I think it's cutting in and out for me too. So, my internet connection is unstable. So I'm just gonna talk. If I cut off, then wave your hand or something. I don't know. So I think I agree with everything Jack said. And I'll take a little bit of a different spin on it. So I think for me, what really kind of, I think, led me to church health was the fact that it really puts you, I think, in the center of the Memphis community, and something that's been really important to me throughout my undergraduate experience. And before that was just being really engaged in the community, wherever that may be, whether that was when I was in high school or when I'm in college, Memphis, Atlanta, wherever it is, to just be engaged in the community and to really learn about that community, because I think everyone has different needs and every community is different. And so I think getting to be engaged throughout college in different communities and learning what different needs were in different communities really kind of introduced me into kind of, I guess, my interest in public health. And that's what led me to intern here. And from my experience here, I saw that, wow, church health is really engaged in the community. It's really hands-on. And so I think that's what led me to my scholar position was, you learn a lot about, I think, medical information and everything Jack was saying, but it's also for me, you get to learn a lot more about the public health aspect, and that's something I'm really interested in, is that intersection between medicine and public health. And so I think you get that really good mix of being engaged in the community, about, the Memphis community, the needs of the Memphis community, which can, even extrapolate out into various different communities around the country. And so you learn a lot about public health, being engaged, diversity, medicine, healthcare, and so all that stuff kind of came together for me in this position in the Scholars Program.
And that's good, and that's I think that's neat talking about it, kind of the center of community, because that it really is. You mentioned holistic health earlier, Anusha, and then Jeneba, you brought up the term as well. But really, that is what we're talking about when we're speaking about holistic health. So Jeneba, once again, I'd like to invite you to make any comments as well on the question. Is there anything that you see in terms of scholar experiences, things from their past school, past jobs that really help prepare students for a scholar position?
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into preparation for the scholar's position, right? And, one thing I always say when I interview scholars, or when people ask me what am I looking for, I always say a willingness to learn, right? And so, having someone who's always interested in learning something new is always beneficial. So having a previous, experience of just being inquisitive about medicine or inquisitive about public health or even administration helps, I think, go a long way. To your point, Alan, that you mentioned is, I learn a lot from the scholars. I think it's definitely a give and take. It's not one-sided by any stretch. It may appear that way, but it really isn't. There's so much that you take from someone who has a fresh perspective, a fresh scope, a fresh set of ideas. And every year there's something new that we've learned from a scholar group, right? There's something that we've learned how to do better. There's something we've learned in terms of how we frame the program that we learn from the scholars. And so that's really, really exciting. But I can't say there's one real skill set that, is just this kind of nail on the head will make you a great scholar and make you a good candidate. But it's really just being inquisitive and, really caring about people, wanting to understand how this place works. It's my goal always with any scholar I work with for them to better understand the system of healthcare. I think if you're going to work within healthcare, understanding the system is so vitally important. And what we do at Church Health in many ways is designed, it's a healthcare center that is designed to deliver healthcare in a way in which the health system is not designed to give, which can be difficult. And so having scholars understand the different nuances of what it's like for a patient to have insurance or not have insurance and how do they navigate that, I think in the long run will make them better practitioners, better clinicians, better administrators, just better leaders within whatever chosen field they have, is to really understand the systems in which we work in.
And I will echo that. I often tell the scholars that, when they leave, we don't expect them to be done. When we say your family, and we really don't let you leave. We really do hope that our scholars come back in, years from now, whether as volunteers or partners or in some way. But really what I try to ingrain in the scholars when talking to each of y'all has always been, if you just learn one thing about how to provide better healthcare in this kind of system, then this program was a success, right? If you are taking one thing that you've learned from Church Health to be a better provider, then Church Health has done its job in working with you as a student, because you have learned it and carried it on and are applying it in your daily practice. And so that is something that we try to encourage here. And so I think that's a good kind of way to summarize that, is that being inquisitive is always something that we are looking for. So I'm also interested, you guys have talked a lot about the different people that you interact with. And so the referral scholars have a very unique position. And so I tend to explain it in our new employee orientations, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, I'll do my NEO spiel. But the way the referrals works, I always love the referrals department, because I always talk about how Church Health and what makes us great in holistic healthcare and understanding our community is recognizing that we do a lot for healthcare, but that we can't do it alone. There are things out there that we just as a healthcare organization do not address, things from housing to food access. But what makes us strong in the community is recognizing that we don't do it alone. And so we reach out to partners and we work with different partners, whether it's through social work or patient assistance or things like that. And so one of the biggest resources we have in the community are these volunteer providers that come in and work in our specialty clinics. And so essentially the way it works for those listening is we may have a provider out in the community who will close down their own operations, their own practice for like maybe one day a month. And so we'll say maybe this person's an ENT specialist. And so they'll shut down their ENT specialty clinic for one day a month and devote that time and actually come into Church Health, work in our clinics, and then see our patients. And so the goal for that, to provide that provider, that volunteer, a good experience, is we want them to come in, be able to see the patient, and then walk out and go home. We don't want them to have to deal with the notes and the paperwork and, you know, making sure they order the tests and doing all those things that they would normally do. And so what we do to make sure we provide that experience and that all those things are done in a quality way is the Referral Scholars. And so that really is kind of what I've come to understand is kind of the key, one of the key pieces of how Church Health really operates within the community is you guys are kind of the linchpin for how we work with our volunteers in the community, and then hopefully come back later as those same volunteers to then guide those current mentors or those current scholars as mentors or something. So you guys obviously interact with a lot of folks. So I'm wondering if you could just share what have been some of your favorite interactions, whether it's been with a patient or a provider or another staff member, just what's been a really positive interaction for you?
Okay, so I'll start first. So I had some really positive experiences with one of the doctors I work with in my subspecialty clinic for urology. And him and you know, I guess all the patients generally, he is a phenomenal physician, not just with the way he treats patients, but with how he interacts with me or whichever scholars that are working with him. He loves to teach the scholar and really walk me or anyone else through what's going on, and he really takes the time to teach us and make sure that we understand. He'll quiz us and to really just keep us on our toes, and then he'll let us, you know, go in with him to shadow and to really just put it all together, because it's different when you're kind of just looking at the paper chart versus when you go in to see the patient and you really get that meaningful experience where you get to go in and see the patient and talk to them, and then we'll take them to check out. And so sometimes you'll just have, you know, a nice little meaningful conversation with the patient on the way out, and they say something that makes your day, or you say something that makes their day, and then I feel like that's just really like the highlight. That's the highlight of my day or the highlight of my week, is when I get to just talk to a patient, and then, you know, I see a smile on their face or they make me smile. So I think, especially when I'm in the clinic and I have those meaningful interactions, those are probably like my favorite moments.
Oh yeah, definitely to harp on that a little bit more. I think one of the reasons why this is such a cool experience is because of the, you know, wide range of diversity and demographics of people that we get to work with, whether it be, you know, different types of patients, different types of providers from different age groups, whether they're still practicing now and maybe in their 30s or 40s, or they're old retired physicians who are volunteering their time and, you know, could be up in their 60s, 70s, or even some providers who are up there in their 80s. And so just to see such a wide range of different people and be able to interact with them and, you know, different areas, I think it's amazing because not to point on like one specific experience, but I can think of amazing experiences I've had with my coworkers, my other referral scholars, with a couple of different volunteer specialists that I work with, and even with patients. Probably the most rewarding experience would be with patients. I think because you're such an intricate part and you get to be that in-between role of, you know, in between the provider and the patient, or the specialist and their patient, you really get to build a relationship with some of the patients, especially ones that you see, you know, in your specialty commonly, or even if you get to see them just a couple of times. Because you're such an intricate part and you're such an in-between for that patient, you get to spend, you know, time with the patient, giving them information, relaying processes to them. And because, you know, we have patients who are seeing specialties over and over again, you get to sort of build a relationship with that patient. And to be such an intricate part of their healthcare, to be the person who's calling them to, give them appointment details and appointment instructions, or to just give them a heads up, like, hey, provider's coming in this date, make sure to keep this date clear on your calendar, whatever it may be. You get to do so much for these patients, and these patients are so unbelievably humble, and 9 times out of 10, they're going to be so ecstatic and so appreciative that you've done all this for them. And so being able to work with patients, over a month's time or over a couple of days, and being able to interact with them multiple times, and to have them, show that appreciation after every phone call, or at the end when you've been trying to get a process done for a long time with them and it finally reaches the end, for them to just let you know how much they appreciate you, and for us to have the responsibility to be such an intricate part in their healthcare, it's unbelievably rewarding to be able to, be along with them for that whole process, and to be one of the key people that, facilitates their, their care, wherever it may be, behind the scenes work or in person. And so I think probably my best experiences have been with some of those patients that I've been, had the opportunity to work with over, a couple of different times over a month's time, or, throughout the entire position that I've worked here. And so that's been amazing. And though I don't have any specific provider stories, being able to be in clinic with the providers, and to have like a special case or something pop up where they get to, walk you through everything that they want to do with the patient, where you get to have, conversations between you, the patient, and the specialty provider, and just to be along the ride for that process can be such an amazing experience, especially when you're seeing something that's rare or uncommon, and to just be able to be in that experience, ask questions, help out along the way. When you get to that end goal and you see how appreciative the patient is, and say you've impressed the provider, or even if you've impressed yourself, it's unbelievable to just have the opportunity to be along for that ride.
Cool. All right. Thank you for sharing, guys. Jeneba, same for you. You're welcome to jump in. Have you had any favorite experiences with scholars in the past?
It's such a hard
question, right?
That's so hard. I've had so many scholars I've interacted with over the years. So I don't know. In fact, we recently said goodbye to one of my employees who started off as a scholar. She transitioned to a new role.
Don't make me cry.
Opportunity of bringing back all of my past scholars for her goodbye ceremony, that had interacted with her, because she started as a scholar. She was my first scholar class I ever had. And then we were able to bring back, every scholar that she interacted with over the last 5.5 years or so, which was pretty cool. And so can't say I have just like one favorite memory, but, the scholars are just such an integral part of my role here at Church Health. Like, I just don't remember a time where I didn't work with a scholar. And it can be anything from back when the world was open, of us going to like really long, fancy lunches, because I like good food and I like to invite my scholars. So I've like taken them to Houston's and stuff. Sorry guys, but we can't go out right now. Or like taking them to really nice restaurants downtown, just to like celebrate something that's really amazing that's happened in the team, and have like a team lunch from when we were moving to Crosstown, and having all my scholars and I kind of put on sweats and move boxes of medical records to different buildings and things like that. So we've had some really crazy experiences, but ultimately there's so many processes and things that happen at Church Health that were created by a scholar, that live on through the scholar. When I first started working here, the first department I worked with was surgery. And it was headed by a past scholar who became a surgeon, who came back to do surgery for Church Health, right? And so there's so many things in the organization that are touched by the scholars program. And I really enjoy the fact that we really believe in the investment of people at a very young age, which I think ultimately is investing in the whole U.S. health system, right? Because we're trying to, show people what healthcare can be like, and how to deliver it, how to care for people, how to care for one another. And then, we want you to go out into the world and spread that in the world. And then of course, come back and donate and volunteer and do all those things. So I can't say there's one memory, but there's not a single memory I can think of through my journey at Church Health that doesn't have an impact of a scholar. They're just super integral, and quite frankly, keep the rest of us feeling young and understanding what's going on with the world, because there's always a new perspective, and I appreciate it. So, yeah.
All right, that was well said. Thank you, Jeneba. Unfortunately, it looks like our time is running short. It is 1:53, so I have one final question for everybody, and so we can do a quick round robin with that. But so really, who should be? So maybe it's a two question, but I'll do it as one. So who should be applying for the Scholars Program? So what kind of students, people interested in what kind of medical fields, or just in general, who should be looking at the Scholars Program? And then two, what advice would you give them when they're looking at the application process? So anybody can feel free to jump in, take a second to think about that. While you all do that, I will say that our application is online at churchhealth.org/scholars. Our priority deadline is February 15th. So if you please make sure that you have full applications in, including two letters of recommendation by February 15th, 2021. I am tongue-tied at the end of this. Sorry, everybody. However, our application will remain open until late March or the beginning of March. I'm sorry, beginning of March. Y'all, I'm going to take a second. I apologize. The application will close in early March. Our priority deadline essentially means that you will be given an interview, but we will start filling positions after that February 15th week. So if your application isn't in, it means that we may already have a position that might be filled by that point, but you still may be considered if you get it in after the February 15th deadline. So with that, I will open up the last question we just asked to one of our scholars, or to Jeneba.
So I think one thing, I know since me and Anusha are both in the referral scholars position, and we are looking more into being, MD or PA, looking more into that direct practitioner or, specialist field. I want to say that with the scholars program, there's so many different positions that you don't have to, if you're not interested in going to the medical field as far as being an MD or a PA, nurse practitioner, whatever that may be, we have positions out like within the scholars position that attack all different kinds of the healthcare field. So like Jeneba said earlier, in providing these people with healthcare, there is so much more that we do at Church Health. So it's the holistic approach of trying to help out the patient as a whole, not just solve a certain diagnoses. And so on top of that, we have so many different departments. We have, a dental team, a behavioral health team. We have our family medicine, internal medicine departments. We also have a PT department. We also have, healthcare administration. It's kind of all over the board. So if you are interested in any aspect of the medical field, whether it be behind the scenes work, seeing patients, or whatever that may be, I think there is a position for you within the scholars position. The best advice that I could give you guys is just to put as much effort as you can and time into, one, deciding which scholars position is going to suit you the best, is going to offer you the best experience for whatever you want to do following the position. And then also really dive into, the specifics of each scholar position and what they hold, what opportunities they're going to present for you, and how that's going to better your own graduate school resume for whatever you want to do following the scholars program.
I would add to that a little bit, Jack, of, one thing that's probably not heavily advertised, though, is that when you think about the different scholar positions, some of them allow you to kind of interact with other departments as well. So the healthcare administration one will allow you to kind of interact with any department that I work with, a lot of the organization, whereas the referrals department may expose you to a million different specialties and different clinics, but it's still within the realm of medicine. And those things, whereas PT will expose you to some PT, and then you may interact with some occupational therapy, but then you'd also interact with some community groups such as the stroke support group, things like that. If you're interested in the optometry position, it'll introduce you into ophthalmology, but also introduce you into some administrative work like patient assistance, as well as how to get donated programs and services for eye care. So there's a lot of different things. I would say that the person that should apply for this role should be someone that maybe doesn't know exactly what they want to do, but they know that they're interested in this and they have a willingness to learn about it and are curious about it. And staying curious, which is something we talk about a lot here at Church Health. But, it is a really cool opportunity to learn. I tell my scholars a lot of times that, it's important. This is one of the last few times where you can make some mistakes, and it's okay. And we're going to be here to help you out, and you're going to learn. Of course, we don't want every day to be a mistake, but yes, it's a good opportunity to just meet people in the field. Church Health is an organization in which, the Scholar in the Well recently reached out to me and said she was interested in public health. And so I said, okay, shadow me in some meetings, right? So you can experience things, even if that's not the direct role that you're in, you can still get experiences in other areas, which is really, really cool, as well as having some direct people to just kind of mentor you. And so if you feel like you're in the need of trying to figure all that out and get those resources before you're ready to pursue education as a doctor or a dentist, optometrist, or going back to grad school, then I think this is the program for you.
All right, we'll hear from Anusha, and then we have one question from the audience. And I believe if anybody does need to go, we are scheduled to end in about a minute, but if anybody wants to hang back to answer any other questions or anything, we'll hang out for a minute or two. So with that, Anusha, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. So Jeneba and Jack really covered everything. I don't have anything really additional to add. I think you can have a wide variety of interests and still apply to the Scholars Program in some way and find your place here and learn if that's something you want to pursue further, or maybe not. That's also really important. And then in terms of, what to look for in the application or kind of what to be thinking about as you're filling out your application, I think, as cliche as it sounds, just be yourself. And I think that'll come through in the application, and your interest will come through, your readiness and willingness to learn will come through. And I think that's the most important part that you can do in preparing for the Scholars Program in your application.
I don't think that was cliche. I think that was very good advice, being yourself. And that is very true. I will say that ability to be yourself and show yourself definitely comes through in the application. So we have one question from the audience. And so it's, can you describe some of the experiences you've had with describing your position, with scribing in your position as a referral scholar? So can you guys talk a little bit about scribing and the referrals role?
Yeah, so to talk more about what it's like in our role when we're actually working with those volunteer providers in their clinics. So just to provide a little bit of background information, say one of my specialties is cardio. If one of our patients is referred to cardio, I'm going to put them on a wait list, and then when it comes to their time, the cardio specialist is going to inform me what day he's coming for clinic. I'm going to schedule the patient for that clinic, and then when he's actively in clinic, we kind of have a very unique role in that we get to do a little bit of everything. We get to wear a couple of hats. We get to, be a little bit of their personal assistant. We get to scribe a little bit. We get to kind of all over the board. It really just depends on specific things that you see in clinic and which specialty you're working with and what responsibilities they give you. As far as scribing, it's not going to be as intense as a regular scribing position, as in, writing down every word and detail that's said within the room while the volunteer provider's in that room. But you do have a very intricate part of the background as far as the provider may write their notes on paper or whatever. Your position or your responsibilities are going to involve scanning those provider notes in, making sure everything detailed in the provider notes is then taken from their notes and added onto the patient's chart in the system that we use called NextGen. So the doctors are really just writing their notes, but you're taking their notes and you're facilitating what orders need to be put in, what labs need to be done, timeframes for follow-up, any notes that the volunteer provider wants to relay to the primary care provider. So though you're not saying, patient 40 years old presented today with blah, 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 you are an intricate part of taking their notes and using all the information that they've written down to then take that information, put it onto the computer, document it in the patient's chart, and then facilitate whatever, they would like to have done, whatever they've ordered, facilitate those orders within our system and then, in the real world.
All right, thank you for sharing that, Jack. Anusha, did you have anything to add, or are you good with that?
No, Jack got it.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Jack. Thank you very much, Anusha and Jeneba, for joining us today. And thank you for our audience and everybody for joining us in our Meet the Scholars webinar with our Referral Scholars. And our application will be closing on February 15th. So thank you, everybody, and have a great day.